Great. Okay, again, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this webinar on a European competence framework for a low carbon economy and sustainability through education. That's a really long word, and the acronym is even longer, so we'll just leave it like that. In this session, we will present the ECF4 CLIM, that's the acronym project, its main objectives, methods, and results. Our three guest speakers today are Ana Prades, who has a PhD in sociology and is the head of the Socio-Technical Research Center of CIEMAT. We also have Yolanda Lechon, who is a PhD in agricultural engineering for the Polytechnic University of Madrid and is the head of the Energy System Analysis Unit of Energy of CIEMAT. We also have Terry Nokola, who is a PhD in Administrative Sciences and is a senior researcher at the Finnish Institute for Educational Research. Without further ado, I will give the floor over to the speakers and hope that they find a shorter acronym for the rest of the webinar.
Hello, dear Twiners. Yes, I am Agustín Bastida. I'm going to moderate this webinar. Thank you very much, Nikki, and thank you very much to Ana Prades, Yolanda Lechon, and Terhi Nokala for staying here with us, because we know you are very busy people. So for ours, it's a very good opportunity. Being working in university and being researchers to share your knowledge and your practical experience of this fantastic project with us. So I moderate, as you probably many of you know, of a group, a future group, and you are invited to take part in it, of course. And as you know, the new platform is being changing, and day by day is going on better. So this is your group in terms of sustainability. And today, to take part in this webinar, and being yesterday, the World Environmental Day, we always try to contextualize any activity and take part in this United Nations Environment Program campaign for this year, which is beat plastic pollution. And of course, we have provided a wall for you to take part. Here there are some questions related to the speeches. Today's session is going to be compounded of two parts. The first part, Ana Prades and Yolanda Lechon are going to talk about the specific program. And here there are some questions for you. You can answer if you feel, if you have interest and would like to take part in it. And after their participation, their speech, we'll answer your questions. And after that, we'll do the same thing with the next expert, Terhi. And now is going to start. I'm going to see if I can go back to the here, and then going now it's your turn, Ana and Yolanda. Thank you very much. I'm sorry for these seconds.
Okay. Thank you very much, Agustín, and good afternoon, everybody. Okay, so I will share my screen. Yolanda and I, we will be presenting this together. I will start. And okay, can you see the slides?
Yes, yes.
Yes. Okay, great. So okay, let's go ahead. So okay, we say ECF for clean. This is how we say it. This is the name of our project. And as you can see, I mean, we are ambitious because we would like to change the conditions, the people and the systems. And we would like to do so through an innovative hybrid participatory approach to education. Our more specific objectives are, as you can see, we aim to develop, to test, and to validate a European competence framework. This is the ECF for transformational change, a change that should empower the educational community to take action against climate change and towards sustainable development. Yes?
We cannot see the slides moving.
You cannot?
See the slides moving. We are in the first one.
Oh.
You have to go to presenter mode, Anna. You were showing the note where the format in which we can see the slides, also the following slides and the notes. So you have to change it to the presenter mode, I think. So yes, you can share your screen again.
Okay, let me see. Okay. Does it work now?
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So sorry about that. Okay. Those are our objectives, and there are two things here that are very important to us, and is that we want to do this through a transdisciplinary approach, and we will see it in a minute. And also participatory processes are at the very heart of our project. Who we are? As you can see, we are 10 research partners in this project from 7 European Union countries. We have experts from a wide variety of disciplines, including educational sciences, environmental sciences, engineering, social sciences, and so on and so forth. So from the disciplinary point of view, we have a wide range of varieties. But what is most important is that we also have 13 demonstration sites. This is 13 schools and universities from Finland, Portugal, Romania, and Spain that are working hand to hand with us in the development of this project. Here you can see a picture of each of our schools and universities in the different countries. And at first sight, you can already realize the variety of environmental and socio-cultural context we are dealing with. And this is indeed an opportunity, but also a challenge. Okay, what are we doing? How are we organizing ourselves to test and develop this competence framework? As you can see, if we start from the left side of the slide, the very first step is defining our initial ECF. And this is what Terhi will talk about in a minute, so I will not get into details of this initial ECF. Just to say that it was strongly based in a participatory approach. So this is the first thing, defining the initial ECF. Then we will test and evaluate this ECF in context in each of our schools and universities, because we want our ECF, our roadmap, to be a practical thing and not a list of competences, but something that fits into the daily life of the educational communities. And once we have tested and evaluated, we will produce the final version of our ECF, the validated ECF. This is what we will deliver to the European Commission. How do we do the testing and the evaluation? Again, we have like 3 steps. The very first one is the baseline. I mean, we want to know, we want to understand how our schools and universities look like at the very beginning of the project. How are they in terms of individual competences regarding sustainability? How do they look like in terms of collective competences and in terms of their environmental performance? So this is the first step, this baseline assessment. Once we know where we are, the demonstration sites, this is how we call our schools and universities, they will co-design through our hybrid participatory approach, they will co-design a number of interventions to improve these competences, the individual, the collective, and the environmental. And then in the third step, we will assess again these competences to check whether after the interventions there have been changes or not, and in what direction. So very briefly, this is how the project works. So I am not going to the initial ECF, as I have said, Terhi will do that. We go directly to the baseline assessment, what we have been doing mainly so far. As you can see, we understand that sustainability competences integrate individual competences, collective competences, and environmental performance. And for us, the collective competences, and this is something that it's very unique in our project, is that we strongly believe that collective competences are crucial if we want to promote any kind of change within the educational community. So let's get into the details. So for what are the collective competences? We have three different kinds of collective competences. Regulative, those are the laws and the regulations that say how sustainability should be considered and promoted, and by whom at the overall level. Then we have the normative competences. Those are the norms, values in each school and university, the plans and the strategies. And finally, we have the cultural cognitive competences. Those are how these regulative and normative are internalized. They translate into the taken for granted norms, behaviors. It's the translation of the regulative and the normative into the daily life of the educational community. We assess these competences through document analysis and a series of interviews. So we have the initial map of each school and university. We do not have the time to get into the details, but like headlines, we can say that as could be expected, and what is really happening between the regulatory normative on the one hand and the cultural cognitive on the other. We have been also able to identify aspects in which theory and practice coincide and aspects in which they do not. And indeed, this is important because those are gaps that one may want to address through the interventions. And finally, there are like and educational levels. For instance, in most countries, there is an important autonomy of teachers when in the sense of they are the ones that finally decide how and when they teach about sustainability, and the acknowledgement of the key role of local authorities if we want to do any change in these schools and universities. And for instance, in terms of differences between countries, in some countries, the poor quality of infrastructures is recognized as a major concern, but this is not the case, for instance, in others, such as Finland. Okay, very brief overview. Let's see the individual competences here. To understand this baseline, we combine a mixed method approach, including short surveys and deliberative workshops. Here you can see the number of participants in each of them, around 1,200 overall participants. And what we obtained was like a preliminary overview of the perceptions and expectations of these participants regarding sustainability before the interventions. As could be expected, quantitative findings suggest like a overall promising starting point. So most participants declare that they are really concerned about these issues, that they are willing to act, and they do not identify significant barriers to act. However, when we went into a more into a deeper reflection through these deliberative workshops, the qualitative evidence reveals a much more complex picture. There is awareness about sustainability issues, but sustainability is understood mainly as an environmental issue, especially waste. Waste is the thing that more frequently comes to the mind of participants when thinking about sustainability. So the social and the economic dimensions of sustainability remain secondary. Another important finding from the qualitative evidence is that social values are perceived as an important barriers because of the system we are part of. And also very important, the organizational and institutional factors are recognized as key, both as a driver or as a barrier. So this is the relevance of the collective competences we were talking about earlier. About the baseline of the environment, here through environmental audits and questionnaires, we developed this kind of ECF for CLIM index. So it's like a picture of where each school or university stands in terms of these 6 parameters. So waste, water consumption, waste management, transportation habits, green spaces, green procurement, or energy consumption. So now we know where they are at the beginning of the project. We will see where they are at the very end of the project. And important, the process of the audits and the questionnaires already engage the educational community in this baseline assessment. Okay, so this is the baseline. So the next step is moving towards the operationalization of the roadmap. It's the design of the interventions. So through this participatory approach, as I have just said, we want to co-design with, the demonstration sites with our support are going to, or are already, co-designed the most suitable measures for them, for each one, to promote sustainability. We also aim to stimulate this continuous engagement, deliberative and reflective process that is essential when it comes to sustainability attitudes, and sustainability-related behaviors. And indeed, we need to gather evidence that will help us to translate our roadmap, our ECF, into practice. So far, what we have done, it's following a method, a tool that it's called the STAFE tool. If you are interested, we can talk about it later. That was developed in a previous European project we were involved, the Packlewell project. We adapted this participatory tool to the educational community, and we create with the demonstration sites a number of innovative organizational models for engagement and action for sustainability. More precisely, we built these sustainability competence teams and sustainability competence committees. The teams there are 3 teams in each demonstration site, a team with students, so students work with the students, another of teachers, so teachers work with teachers, and the same with administrative staff. And then we have the committees, and here plus from the wider educational community. This is principals, NGOs, students' unions, parents' associations, local authorities were important, and more actors that are relevant at the local level. I am not going into the details, but here you can see the deliberative and reflective approach of our participatory process, and how the first sessions of the teams and committees concentrated on promoting reflection on where we are, the starting point, trying to generate a common understanding of sustainability, and the competences that reflect on the baseline of each demonstration site, so they are aware of where they are. And the second sessions were designed to define these kind of measures to promote sustainability. Okay, this is how it links to the roadmap. This is something that Terhi will explain later on. So we have already, the demonstration sites have already co-designed their measures in the 4 countries, and we have 3 different kinds of measures. Measures that aim to change the conditions. This is the environmental performance. measures that aim to change the people, this is the individual competences, and measures that aim to change the system, this is the collective competences. So I give the floor now to Yolanda, and she will explain a bit more about these measures and an example that we have from a school in Madrid. Yolanda.
Okay, thank you, Anna. Well, this is a landscape of the type of measures that have been identified in the sustainability competence teams and committees in the different demonstration sites in our project. And as Anna said, there are like 3 types of measures. One's oriented to the environmental performance, improving the environmental performance, changing the conditions of the educational institutes, and other types that are more oriented to improving the individual competencies, changing the people, and the last one oriented to collective competencies, changing the system in which each demonstration site operates. So in the first type of measures, there are some interventions related to changing equipments, like reducing water use, installing sensors, or installing solar panels or solar water heating systems, or changing the luminaires with LED, or improving the thermal insulation of the buildings, etc. So focus on new equipments. Other are more related to infrastructures, for example, parking for buses, or for bikes, or for improving electric transport by making this type of infrastructures, or making investments on the green spaces of the school, etc. And there are also interventions related to accounting and monitoring. So many demonstration sites are very aware of the waste produced, and they have some accounting measures. They are monitoring also electricity consumptions, etc. So these are the types of interventions identified for improving the environmental performance. For improving the individual competencies, we have different types of interventions identified. For example, there are field trips to museums or nature or other waste management installations, etc. We have also some schools that are organizing events or theme weeks related to different specific themes each week, or they are also organizing awareness campaign focused on different informations or different topics. And they are also acting on increasing learning possibilities, for example, through training courses for students or teachers, or different seminars, workshops, discussions, etc. And also some of them are organizing competitions and rewards. And finally, for the collective competencies, we have actions oriented to improving the curricula by integrating some sustainability issues in the topics that are taught at each demonstration sites. Also, pedagogical interventions, some learning spaces or learning materials, developing this type of pedagogical materials, also working on culture, consolidating the best ideas, including sustainability in all the activities, etc. And also steering documents like strategies or plans and regulations that are being implemented in the schools, cooperation with others, and also research in, for example, master and doctoral thesis on sustainability. So there are a broad landscape of activities that are being considered by the demonstration sites. So next slide, Anna. This is just one example of one of these interventions that we have been developing in one demonstration site in Spain. This is a second-hand school market related to clothes. So we have the objective of this activity was to increase the awareness, raise awareness about the environmental footprint of clothes in terms of water and also carbon footprint. And we the sustainability competence committees and teams try to organize this type of activities in which the students bring some clothes and also take ones. And in this activity of reusing these clothes, they are saving water and saving CO2. And we have a calculator. If you go to the next slide, we saw the calculator that we are using, in which by weighting the clothes and looking at the composition of each clothes, we can calculate how the amount of water and CO2 that is involved in the production of these clothes. So if you go to the previous one, the results we obtained in this single activity was that we could save a lot of water, like a swimming pool of 4 times 5 square meters of water by changing these clothes, and also 11 kilos of CO2 that would be equivalent like a tree capturing CO2 for a whole year. So this is just an example illustrating which type of activities we are making in the demonstration site. And the next one. Okay, so this is where we are in terms of timing in our project. We are just, as Anna said, finalizing the baseline assessment and starting the interventions. So the next school term, we will implement the interventions that we have been identifying in the committees and the teams, and also identifying more. And the last part of the project will be dedicated to evaluating this process and producing the validated ECF. I think that the next one is yours.
Okay. This is the very last one, and we just wanted to share with you how are we experiencing the project so far in terms of challenges and opportunities, and maybe there are more than we have included here. But first, challenges linked to the carrying out participatory research in educational settings. And for some of us, it was the first time that we were working in the educational community. We have more like a social sciences background. And I mean, it was really surprising for us to learn about the strong time and resource limitations that our schools and universities have. So it was really challenging to integrate an additional activity, to incorporate this participatory process, the baseline assessment and the interventions. So from the methodological perspective, the key word was flexibility. We really work hard to adapt this STAFE tool to the singularities of the educational dynamics. And indeed, this flexibility has implications in terms of the nature of the evidence that we are generating. But this is not so relevant. What is relevant in our view is that the method is working. We are really engaging the participants, the key actors in our schools and universities. And so far, their degree of satisfaction, as they themselves express it, it's pretty good. So far, it is working, and it's like a learning process for all of us. And then there is also some reflection regarding the interdisciplinary approach, or our transdisciplinary approach. because I mean, within the research team, we had like engineers that were moderating focus groups or social scientists that were in charge of installing metering devices. So it was really challenging. At some moments, we fear that we could run the risk of running in parallel. So not really moving towards interdisciplinarity or transdisciplinarity. But we are devoting time to this because this is something most projects now demand, that we work with this kind of multidisciplinary approach. And we feel that there is this a really good opportunity to generate empirical evidence on how this is working in practice. And this is something that we are also working with, and that we hope to produce some interesting results not so far from now. Okay, so I think this is it. Thank you very much. Those are the languages of our project, and I think that's it from our side.
Thank you very much, Anna and Yolanda. It's been a pleasure. There are too many figures and data, so this is why some of the participants would like to see them bit by bit at home. Is it possible to share your presentation with them?
Yes, to send it to them, or share it now.
So to display in the
Okay.
I moderate, I will upload it just for them, and this video as well, if you agree with this idea of sharing good projects or model of reference.
Yes, yes.
Perfect. And there are, I don't know if there is any question, but Arantzazu Iturrioz, a very good friend from Santander, would like to know if you think that I don't know if you know the answer, but it's Arantza question. Do you think that the water crisis we are living nowadays and the drought that many countries are suffering from are producing more social awareness, more social impact? Water crises have a direct impact on the life of people, food, well-being, money. Thanks.
Okay, we may have a guess, but we really do not have like empirical evidence now to provide a proper answer to this question. We may have like a lay person, we could think that it may have an impact, but in the context of the project, we have not gathered evidence on that. I mean, it's true that in some of the measures that the demonstration sites have suggested, water was an issue, and especially, for instance, in some of the schools in Spain. I'm not so sure about in Portugal, but so this may be an indicator that water is becoming a concern, a bigger concern, because they were like thinking, okay, how we can saving water became somehow an issue.
Well, seeing your competencies, I was thinking about the problem you have afforded or you can find during the organization, because how can you manage to do these regulations or rules in different countries, make the make them work together and without any problem, and the same thing with the different educational system. How, because when we are trying to do a collaborative project with among different countries in Europe, the difficulties around the different educational systems, even the calendar, the academic year, and the normative, probably there are some troubles or problems to develop the project go well. How come you manage, or have you got any experience that you remember in a specific way that you said or you thought, well, this is impossible. We cannot go in advance with the project. Have you found any difficulty during the process?
Mm-hmm. Yes, but I mean, I guess the first point here, and maybe Turkey would like to add something, is that I mean, we do not aim to change the regulations or to produce new regulations or to what we want to produce is a reflection on how these are important, and especially give the voice to the schools and universities, so they are the ones that can say how these things should look like. And what and this is what this roadmap that Terhi will explain in a moment will try to convey. So it is like an overall framework that should guide, that should support the schools from different contexts to move forward to this transformational change. But it does not materialize in changing the regulatory framework. I mean, we cannot do that, but we can make it clear how relevant they are and what are the weak or the strong points in the countries we are dealing with. Indeed, I mean, and this is it does not, we do not intend it to be representative of the whole European Union.
Thank you very much, Turkey. Well, I think there is not any other question. Turkey, is your turn now?
Okay, thank you. I shall try to share my presentation as well. Let's hope that it works. Can you see the presentation now? I hope you can.
Yes.
I am going to talk a little bit about our roadmap for sustainability education. And first I will, the way that I will structure my presentation is that first I will tell you a little bit about the GreenCom framework, which is produced by the European Commission's Joint Research Centre, and which provides kind of like a basis for our sustainability roadmap. And then I will tell you a little bit about how the roadmap came about, what kind of collective crowdsourcing mechanisms we used to put the roadmap together. And then I will go into the contents and how the roadmap can be used. So let's see. I have a slight problem here. I'm not sure if you will actually see, whether you will actually see this. I hope you do.
The animation.
So first, a little bit about the GreenComp. And this GreenComp is, you might be familiar with it. It is the European Competence Framework for Sustainability, which has been produced by the Joint Research Centre of the European Commission. And it was published in early 2022. It is one of the policy actions that was set out in the European Green Deal as a catalyst to promote learning on environmental sustainability in the European Union. And it identifies a set of sustainability competences. And the way that they understand competences is that competencies comprise of knowledge, skills, and attitudes. So GreenComp is structured as comprising 4 competence areas: values, complexity, visions, and action. And each of these have 3 competencies, and each of the competencies have a set of knowledge, skills, and attitudes, and those have set of descriptors. So it's a very kind of like complex structure, but our roadmap aims to make this complex structure and very extensive contents somehow usable and readable for the schools. So we hope to provide literally a roadmap for the schools to think about how might they be able to, move towards achieving these competences. If we go to the next slide, this is just a quick picture about the content areas of the Green Comp. Embodying sustainability values, which comprises valuing sustainability, supporting fairness and promoting nature. Embracing complexity, which comprises systems thinking, critical thinking, and problem framing. Envisioning sustainable futures, which includes futures literacy, adaptability, and exploratory thinking. And finally, acting for sustainability, which includes individual initiatives, collective action, and political agency. And these are divided further into a set of knowledge, a set of skills, and a set of attitudes that are kind of described over 167 descriptors altogether. But this is rather challenging to kind of read and to actually understand, and that's why we have wanted to make this roadmap a tool for making the Green Comp somewhat more readable. If we go to the road to roadmap, so how did we actually produce this roadmap? Let's see. So a few words about how the roadmap was developed. It was created on the basis of a crowdsourcing process that invited wide audiences to discuss the enablers and constraints of sustainability education, both in our partner countries and more broadly in the international setting. And altogether, over 500 people around Europe participated in these crowdsourcing activities, either in the face-to-face workshops or in the discussions on the online crowdsourcing platform, these recurring discussions on the platform. Additionally, rather extensive document analysis and literature review was conducted as a sort of background for creating the roadmap. It has also been reviewed by a group of international experts, for example, from the Commission, from JRC, and also from our sister project, GreenSend. And the roadmap will, as Anna and Yolanda explained, will be developed further in the demonstration sites through the various interventions that take place over there. And as you see, we've gone through the crowdsourcing, creating the initial roadmap and the expert review, and we are currently at this testing and validating stage. A little bit more about the crowdsourcing events. There you can see the number of different types of workshops and participants that attended those workshops in our 4 countries with the demonstration sites. Majority of the workshops were organized in the context of our demonstration sites, separately or jointly for students and teachers, for example, but also a number of workshops that were organized for institutional leadership in schools, for vulnerable groups in societies, for example, indigenous groups or vulnerable youth, to kind of get their voice heard in the process as well. And finally, we organized 2 international workshops and eDelphi discussion. eDelphi is an online platform for crowdsourcing and for discussion that was recurring over 4 weeks, like people joining the discussion over the course of 4 weeks, always with new questions to be discussed. The method that we used in the workshops was a method of empathy-based stories, in which people had to imagine various scenarios. The task was to imagine that the participants were working or studying in a school where sustainability education was implemented as if it was the worst possible nightmare, and also as if it was, the best possible dream. and people had to imagine what would happen in that school, and the participants also had to discuss kind of what would enable and would constrain sustainability education in that school and why. We used these kinds of small stories to frame the discussion. I'm not going to read those through, but basically we had this nightmare scenario, and people had to discuss, like, what would the teachers do and the students do, what would the rector or principal do, what would the staff and parents do, and how would they act, and how would the body that would maintain the school, be it a municipality or something else, how would they promote or hinder sustainability in these different scenarios. So this was the project, and we collected data either on sticky notes if it was a face-to-face workshop in schools, or in some cases we had access to Flinga board, which is similar to Padlet, and allowed people to kind of like make notes and group those notes, and all of those contributed to our work as data. Then the roadmap itself. As I mentioned, this roadmap is quite closely related to the structure of the European Commission's work or to the Green Comp work, and therefore we're using somewhat similar language to make it easier for people to read these two documents side by side. So if they're familiar with the Green Comp, then they will be able to, in a way, recognize in the structure of how our roadmap is structured, the same elements. So in those bubbles, you can see again the headlines from the titles from the Green Comp, embodying sustainability values. And for us, the important bit here is engagement, why and how to promote sustainability, and that is related to values. Then the next step in Green Comp was embracing complexity and sustainability. And here we talk about connections and what are the connections between issues and between actors in each given school. Envisioning sustainable futures, what are the possible futures in our context? And finally, acting for sustainability. Then this prompts the schools to think about action and how to proceed. I will briefly tell you about, or show you a little bit about these areas. First one was how to engage people. Step one was engagement. And even though they are presented in the picture that I showed you previously, they're presented in a rather linear form, but that is not the idea. The idea is not to kind of think about it merely in linear form. It could have been more circular, and we might think about changing the visual at some point. But at the same time, we feel that before you can get to action, you may have to go through the other steps. So we're a little bit sort of sitting on the fence in terms of to what extent do we view this as a linear process, and to what extent we view it as a circular or sort of meandering process in the schools. The first step is anyway engagement, and the question is how to engage people and how to get people on the same page in terms of sustainability, engaging them with sustainability work and sustainability thinking, both in their private life and study, as well as future and current work life. And in order to engage, people will need to know about the importance of sustainability. And they will need to engage in a deliberative value reflection and inclusive dialogue on the values and meanings of sustainability. And the aim of this step is to foster kind of like an emergence of common understanding of sustainability and common good in, the school context. It also establishes the principles for promoting fairness and collaboration. So everybody's voice needs to be heard in the process if one wants to make a change in a school context. The second step is connections, how to frame the project, the problem. It aims at finding systemic connections of sustainability and individual disciplines and work, both in work context and in everyday life. Additionally, it promotes critical thinking about the state of the environment and the perspectives of the different stakeholders. And the main question here is really how to frame the problem. What are the issues that we should work on and get better at our particular specific context? So, for example, in our own school or university. Why do we think the way that we do? And what is kind of like the footprint and the handprint of our organization? And we somehow find that this step is the most challenging one in some ways, because one has to see how the different actors, different structures, different values, different voices, different practical questions in a school, how do they fit together, both in terms of the contents of sustainability and in terms of actually making a change. So where does power lie, for example? The next step would be envisioning sustainable futures. In the Green Comp, and we simply talk about visions. And the main question here is, what are the possible futures in our context? We assume that visioning futures, possible different futures, strengthens the adaptability and generates a creative exploratory thinking in terms of what do we want to achieve as an organization or as a community. It also includes notions around encouraging each other and thinking creative solutions to achieve that, because obviously problems cannot be solved with the same thinking that have produced a problem. So we need to think about alternative futures. What is also important at this step is the notion of hope, because if we get too discouraged by sort of a defeatist idea that everything is going to go wrong in terms of sustainability and the world is just coming to an end, then we cannot act. So this visions and envisioning sustainable futures includes also the notion of fostering hope. The final step is action. It aims at creating concrete action and evaluating the results. It is important to bear in mind that although each step kind of like emphasizes a specific competence area of the Green Comp, all these 4 competence areas are intertwined at every step. And here the questions are, or the points are sort of like, how can we proceed? What are the steps that we need to take? First, there should be time and place for sustainability activities in the school or university, rather than having a series of disconnected projects where the action ends when the project ends. Also, planning is very important. So we need some kind of an action plan. So strategies and goals that enable progressing on a long term. And finally, activities need to be resourced, both financial resources, human resources, and also lines of ownership and action sort of operationalized into the school so that every activity has ownership. So somebody has ownership for every activity is important. So this was the kind of like the final step of our roadmap. In the roadmap document itself, which obviously one needs to always produce when it comes to the commissioned projects, each step follows the same structure. So first we introduce the definitions and the competence area and competencies according to the Green Comp. Then we introduce the aims of that particular step along the lines that I've just told you. We will introduce the essential contents, and there on the slides you can see this terrible acronyms D3.1 and D3.2. So these refer to the deliverables, the reports that we've had to produce for the European Commission. And so, as I mentioned, this roadmap draws from the work that was done in the crowdsourcing, so deliverable 3.1, and a literature and document analysis, which was the deliverable 3.2. So these produce the contents, and all of the roadmap is structured, or the contents are structured under individual competencies, collective competencies, and environmental performance, because these were the 3 key things in the roadmap, or in the ECF for Clean project in general. There are examples of development processes for each of these steps. There is a list of possible constraints and enablers that are associated with that step, again arising from the crowdsourcing activity. As you remember, the workshops focused very strongly on these constraints and enablers and discussing those. And finally, there are examples of tools and materials that are related to that step. And these materials have been collected from each of these countries with demonstration sites. So the four countries being Spain, Portugal, Romania, and Finland. A few more slides. I'm nearly done. I hope I'm not exceeding my time. This may look a slightly complicated slide, but this aims to bring together the three dimensions of the ECF for Clean project: the individual competencies, the collective competencies, and the environmental competencies, environmental performance. You can see them there at the top of the slide. And it also briefly lists the kinds of interventions that are aimed at fostering each of these in the demonstration sites. And earlier, Yolanda showed you a bigger, more detailed slide about these different types of interventions that have been or conducted or planned by our demonstration sites. So here is just like very few examples of those. For example, under environmental performance, you can see there new equipment or infrastructure, accounting or monitoring types of interventions. And then finally, the slide contains each of these three types of competences through the 4 steps of the roadmap there on the left-hand side: engagement, connections, visions, and action. And it again lists the green competences as well, so that all the time we follow the green comp in a sense, that because that is the official document, so that a roadmap might be helpful in enabling schools to actually make use of that document. And what you see there on the center of the slide are a series of questions. The idea is that we aim to help the institutions to ask the questions that might help them as they go about making change. This is in rather early stages yet, and certainly not something that would be sort of theoretically watertight, but the whole idea of the roadmap is to give tools for the schools for them to do their own thinking around sustainability. It is not aimed at producing ready solutions or list any specific competencies like Green Comp does, but provide questions, pertinent questions for the schools and communities to ask around sustainability. If you're interested in the dissemination materials, they can be found on the ECF for Clean website, where we have the full roadmap version as a deliverable 3.3, as well as a short version of it. We have hosted an online dissemination workshop, and there's a recording available on the website. We produced long video from the dissemination event with captions that was in English, but then with captions in the other languages, as well as short 5-minute videos in the languages of the demonstration sites themselves. And what is still under construction is kind of like an interactive website-based version that is going to be launched in early autumn on on a Mappa portal, which is this Mappa service or Mappa portal is an open, updatable platform which contents can be produced by anyone. And also, we're hoping that this will allow us to continuously update the roadmap and add, for example, new tools that emerge from the interventions of their demonstration sites, but why not from any school around Europe, for example, as well. Additionally, there may be some other dissemination materials that the audiences that the partners have produced for their domestic audiences. And finally, here is our little group in Finland at the Finnish Institute for Educational Research, who have been responsible for creating this roadmap. And especially, I would like to highlight our postdoctoral researchers, Nina Mykra and Anna Lehtonen, who have done a stellar job in putting all this together. I think those were all of my slides. end slideshow, and then I would need to figure out how do I stop sharing. It's probably this one. Okay, thank you.
Great.
Thank you very much, Steffi. And I've got a question about, well, you've done, or you are doing a fantastic work is with a lot of data. And I've got a question. Have all the participants have followed these different competencies at school, the collective, individual, just to put in practice these workshops? Or is in the they are preparing it?
Obviously, when we're talking about these sort of competencies, like, okay, these are the individual competencies, so these are the collective competencies. In some ways, these are heuristics that have been created by researchers. In the Green Comp, which focuses, produced by JRC, that focuses largely on the individual competencies, and there have been large expert groups and extensive literature research that have contributed to creating this list. We do not, and we have done analysis about what we termed collective competences that are about what are the schools able to do, what do they have to do, and you know, what kind of norms have they adopted and what kind of behaviors have they adopted as a community towards acting sustainably. But obviously, these are heuristics that are produced by researchers, and the schools do not have to think about them in terms of, you know, them having these names that these are collective competencies, or this is environmental performance, or this is kind of like a normative base. What is important for the schools is for them to think about, okay, you know, how do we get everybody on board? So engagement. How do we understand that this is a very complex phenomenon that involves lots of different types of actors, different types of enabling, but also restricting structures? And how do we overcome that? So that was the connections part. Then what are the values what are the visions that we can think about? What is the future towards which we as a school or as an educational community want to go towards? And then what is the action that we are going to take, and how are we going to operationalize and resource that action? So they don't actually need to think about it in terms of, oh, these are collective competencies, but collective competencies is just the word that we're using, because we're also a part of an academic community towards which we have to communicate. I hope this answers your question.
Yeah, thank you very much, Becky. Thank you very much. I don't know if there is any participant who would like to ask you a question. So in the future, you can share your materials in that site you mentioned, no? In MAP, yes?
Yes, the idea is that once the MAPA portal is existing, and there are lots of materials there, but it's a Finnish portal at the moment, so majority of the materials there at the moment are in Finnish. But what we're doing first is producing an English version of the roadmap, structured in a similar way as I explained about our roadmap document, and then it can be linked into any sorts of activities that are already there, or one can add more activities or more information that is that can be accumulated over the next forever 10 years. So this is going to be, you know, in a way, a resource that will remain even after the Easier for Clean project is finished, and then that can be also produced in all of the national languages, obviously.
And the last question for me: can any e-twinner take part in your project?
I think that there are probably different ways of participating. I think that, for example, these kinds of exercises for the method of empathy-based stories, for example, is something that could be produced in any school, and you know, we can share the materials for something like that. I think that our crowdsourcing platform is something that, you know, the questions that were asked can be can be asked in any context, for example. And the whole roadmap document, and better yet, once we get the website version, which will be easier to use, will be something that can be produced in and reproduced in any context. And it is very much, I think, linked to the school community, and what can a community do together, and how can the community get more sustainable or take action towards sustainability. And our project tries to, in addition to obviously doing the research to produce all of this, is to produce a set of tools that can then be, and guidelines that can then be adopted in any context. Or I don't know, Anna and Yolanda, how would you say?
Yeah, no, just maybe to add that besides that, I mean, one thing that besides the specific evidence that we gather or the specific interventions work that we do together with our demonstration sites, our idea is that besides this final validated version of the roadmap, the participatory approach that we are using to put all these roadmap in practice in the schools. This is like the committees and the teams. The idea is that we also create some kind of toolkit with these methods that should be also replicable in any school that should be interested in initiating this kind of process. So we hope that we will also deliver that.
Yes, and we are also building a digital platform in which we are also putting all these tools together that can be used by any school or university.
Thank you very much. Anna, Terhi, Yolanda, thank you very much indeed.
Great. Yes, once again, thank you very much. Thank you very much also to the participants for being here with us this afternoon.